one of the things I found out about myself is I I find great happiness in serving other people, in service.
Mhm.
You know, serving your country, serving as a leader, serving the guys on your team, being a resource for them, helping them become the best version of themselves.
Welcome to AfterSOF. I'm Patrick Brennan.
And I'm Daniel Bell.
Today's guest is Jason Van Camp. Jason was a West Point graduate, played football there, went on to earn his Ranger tab and become a Special Forces officer. He has since transitioned from the military and started two very successful companies, as well as writing a book.
With his Mission 60, he does consulting with firms, especially NFL teams. And with Warrior Rising, what he works to do is educate, mentor, and provide resources for veterans starting their own businesses. They have a pretty steep goal of helping 100 veteran entrepreneurs create businesses that generate over $1 million every year by the year 2024. I hope you enjoy this episode.
Yeah, it's going to be great. I hope you guys enjoy it. See you next time.
Yeah, what attracted you? Did you have a parent that was in the service? Did you have an uncle? Was it something in the past that drew you into the military, or was it simply this ideal love of country, or what drew you in?
Yeah, that's a good question. So my journey was sort of on a path that it just materialized. It just sort of happened for me. Um, I didn't have a plan at a young age to say, okay, I'm going to go into the military. This is how I'm going to get into the military. This is a branch that I'm going to go into. And once I get there, here are the steps that I'm going to take in order to be successful. I didn't ever, at no point in my life did I ever come up with a plan like that. I think people that do have plans like that have a mentor, have somebody to hold their hand and guide them and show them the path. I never had that. I've wanted one, always wanted one, but I never really had that. My dad uh, was a government contractor. He worked at the AMC building in Virginia, and I never really knew what he did. Whenever I asked him, he said, "I work with computers," and that was sort of normal for kids growing up in the DC area. You didn't know what your dad did. Sometimes your mom. So like show and tell. You're like, what do your parents do? Well, my dad works for the government. Case closed, no more questions. Or and my dad works for the military. Maybe they say what rank is he, but that was kind of it. You know what I mean? That's all you get. And my grandfather served in World War II. He was in the Army Air Corps, which later became the Air Force, and he retired after, gosh, probably like 40 years or something. I'm not really sure, but he was a lifetime military guy. He was in Georgia and in Germany for a while, and ended up the tail end of his career in the DC area. But he never really talked about it. Sometimes when we were at our grandparents' house, he'd show up after work in his uniform, and he was a quiet guy, so never really spoke about it. Um, Growing up in the DC area in the '80s, there were two enemies. One, the Russians, and now they're quickly becoming our enemy again. And two, the Dallas Cowboys. And so we just hated both those, and probably number one, Dallas Cowboys. We hated more than the Russians in the DC area. You know, the Redskins, now the Commanders, at one point the Washington football team. They were our rivals are the Cowboys, and we were really good in the '80s. We won Super Bowls, and as soon as I turned 14, for the last 31 years, it's been, part of my language, a shit show. You know, but that's a good thing because I'm going out to help the Commanders this year. So Ron Rivera is a friend of mine. He's the head coach of Washington. He's a stud. I spent some time with him and the team a few months ago, or I guess a month ago, and I'm going back there next week to spend about a week with them. And they're great. They're on the right path. Ron's the perfect coach and so forth. But back to your question about what prompted me to join the military. Growing up in that area, I'm patriotic. And you see how other kids are patriotic, and you see how these families are patriotic. There's a lot of flag flying. There's a lot of go Army, go Navy, around the Army Navy game sort of thing. And I knew I knew I was patriotic. I knew I loved my country. I knew I wanted to do something, but I didn't know what that was, you know. And growing up, I was more focused on sports and academics than anything. And I was really good at football. That was sort of the sport I was best at, and it opened up some doors for me, some opportunities for me. And I thought I was going to go to a big time college football program. At the time, I was like, I'm going to Florida State. I'm going to University of Miami. I'm going to one of the schools that was winning a lot during that time period. And when it came time for me to get recruited, some of the recruiters would look at me and they're like, "Oh man, he's 6'1" and he's 180 pounds. Man, you're just small. You can't play for us." And I was like, "Well, I'm kind of fast and I'm kind of strong," and they didn't care. And so eventually, guys in my situation ended up getting recruited by the Naval Academy, the Air Force Academy, and West Point, and VMI, and some Division I AA schools. And my parents were really excited about West Point. I was not. I went on an official visit there. I hated it. I did not like it. But the recruiter was Coach Greg Gregory. He was offensive coordinator at the time, and he was all about me for some reason. He loved me, man, and he called me. He came to our school. He came to my house. You know, and none of the other recruiters were as intense or as relentless as he was. And finally, like I didn't know which school to go to because I had my sights set on like Florida State, like I said. And so finally, he was at my house. He's like, "Jason, we need an answer. What's it going to be? Are you coming to West Point? Are you going to join the long gray line or not?" And, and I remember my parents were like kind of looking at me like, "Say yes, say yes." And I said, "I'll do it." So I decided to go to West Point. And I got there, and I immediately regretted my decision. Like I I hate this. What did I sign up for? This is the worst. Um, and so I just stuck through it, man. Just embraced the discomfort, embraced the hard times, and stayed there for all 4 years. Every day was worse than the last, and it was the worst 4 years of my life. And it's a good place to be from, but not a good place to be at. So that's what I'll say about my West Point experience.
That's an interesting story because most people, right, like they're going out of the way to try to find ways into the military academies, right? Like they got letters from their senators and their representatives trying to get in, applying wise, and sports is a great gateway to opportunities. So that's a cool different perspective and approach to getting
That's
in.
how I got in,
That's pretty cool.
and it was hard for me. I think I was 18. I was young. I think I was inexperienced in life. I was immature. I hadn't given the military or a military academy any thought, so I just kind of got in there cold, thinking I'm just going to dominate, physically, and then everything else will sort of take care of itself. But it was such a difficult experience for me. It kind of helped me become stronger later in life. Meaning, you go to Ranger school, and it's tough. It sucks. I found myself thinking, you know what, this sucks, but at least I'm not at West Point. You know what I mean? Like I'd rather be at Ranger school than at West Point. I go to the Q course, kind of the same thing. Like sucks, but it doesn't suck as bad as West Point did. So I'm good to go. And so in life, like even in combat, you're like, I'm taking these shots, but at least I don't have to be there. So that's kind of helped me become stronger in life. I mean, legitimately, I'm not even teasing about that.
That'll be the next recruiting slogan for West Point. Come to West Point so you can base your life experiences off.
Everything else is easy for you after that.
When we were talking to Travis Clovis a couple weeks ago, that's what I think of the academies, because I was stationed there. I guess probably your last years when I was there, and that I watched all of you go do all your PT and beast and everything else, and then you're college students and you're expected to perform at the top of your class as well. So there's no time to be worn out, to sleep in, to do any of that. Like, it's constant. And I remember young cadets coming in and they're like, yeah, I went on a 3-hour run today. And you're like, what? 3 hours? Like, you didn't have I'm going to run 12 miles, or I just went out and ran for 3 hours. Oh, and I had my pro mask on. And you'd see them running through Highland Falls. So I mean, I completely get what you're saying when you talk about that difficulty there, and being glad that you weren't at the academy.
Yeah.
Yeah. So is that like you graduate West Point? I mean, moving forward, like the driving force for you was it just, did you seek out those harder opportunities or the specialized special operations just to challenge yourself, or what was the motivation there?
I say this all the time. I'll say it again right now. My mother told me when I was young. She said this all the time: "Show me your friends, and I'll show you your future." Right. So whoever you surround yourself with is a good predictor. It's a good indicator of what you're going to become. So if you are on a sports team and you want to be the starter, you kind of hang out with the starting lineup. If you want to be a millionaire, hang out with millionaires. And it works both ways. Like if you find yourself hanging out with a bunch of losers, then probably going to end up being a loser. Hanging out with drug dealers, probably going to end up being a drug dealer. That's kind of how it works. As much as I like that phrase, "Show me your friends, I'll show you your future." Nowadays, it's much it's more like, "Show me your network, and I'll show you your net worth." You know. And so growing up, I tried to, or I kind of after I left, got to the military and went to school and the whole thing. I tried to surround myself with the best quality people. And when I graduated from West Point and got commissioned as an officer, my friends were all excited about going to pre-Ranger PT, so that they could go to Ranger school. If my friends weren't all about that, I probably wouldn't have wanted to do that, you know. But the fact that my friends were doing that, I was kind of like, well, I'm not going to be left out. I'm not going to be the guy who's not going. I can do this. I mean, if you're going to do it, then shit, I have to do it too. Then okay. And so I went to pre-ranger training, and we started out with like 100 guys, and by the last day, we had 12 guys left, and 9 guys were selected to go to ranger school, and of those 9 guys, 3 graduated. Like that was the situation. Me being one of those 3 guys. And that was sort of an eye-opening moment for me when I graduated from Ranger School, man, because it was difficult. It was something that was completely outside my comfort zone, like going through the military stuff, um, leading, like for real for the first time, although it's not in combat. Like you're in situations where your grade depends on your ability to be in charge and lead. And I really enjoyed the experience. I had a good time there. I enjoyed the people there. The instructors were great. Um, and I just performed well. And so I thought, this is something that I enjoy, something I'm good at. I want to continue doing things like that. And when I got into the actual army, no longer OBC or Ranger School when you're in the army, having a Ranger tab, I saw like how many doors that opened up for me. I would report to units, and they'd be like, "Oh yeah, dude, you're a Ranger. Okay, you're coming with us." And it's like, well, I got the best slot. They don't even know me. They never had a conversation with me. They just saw a Ranger tab, so I'm solid. I'm good to go. And I just like, from there, I said, you know what, maybe I could do Green Beret. Maybe I could try out for that. And I had some friends that were excited about that, and they convinced me to do it. And I said, let's do it. So I went and submitted my packet and found myself on a bus going to Camp McCall one day.
Everybody's favorite place. So
Yeah.
no,
So-
that's fine.
Yeah, go ahead.
So you were with the 101st, and what had you seen guys over at 5th Group or guys from, like, what was it that drew you towards submitting your packet? Was there anything specific that you were like, oh yeah, okay, I'm going to go Special Forces?
I guess a couple things. One, I was super, super fit, right? And physically, I loved going to the gym and working out, and later in life I got into running and I started to get good at that, and guys would notice that about me. Guys, on my team, guys that, the enlisted guys and some of the officers and so forth. And then next is like I was always chill. I was always pretty laid back. I was never like getting in people's faces and yelling. And when we were in combat, like it's kind of the same thing. I was pretty calm, pretty cool, pretty collected. I got shit done, and other people were freaking out and panicking. And then from time to time, people would, and also I like to put my hands in my pockets. Like who gives a shit, right? Put your hands in your pockets, and you're an SF guy. And so from time to time, my enlisted guys or my peers or my, people would be like, you got SF written all over you, man. And I kind of would think about that. And on top of that, I lived in Russia for 2 years. I served a mission for my church there. And so I speak fluent Russian. At the time, for the DLPT, I'd get 3 3s on that, which is the highest you can get. And I knew a big part of joining the Green Berets was learning the language. And so I said, well, I already got that covered, And I would meet guys that claimed to speak foreign languages. And whenever I met a guy who spoke Russian, I would talk with them, and I'd be like, this guy sucks. And this guy can't speak for crap, right? Like he knows a few words, but, you can't really be actually being immersed in the language for 2 years, living in that country. And so I knew, like, if they brought me on, that was the one thing I'd have that would be better than everybody else is my language skills.
Yeah, most folks don't have it, right? Like even in 7th group, most of the guys were either they grew up with the language or, they immigrated. When I went through the course, I mean, they, of course they change everything all the time, right? And so they had broken up the language portion. You essentially got a couple weeks of immersion, right? And they weren't real concerned about how well you knew Spanish. It was, how know these phrases in Arabic.
Right.
But for the guys that did have those languages, there was a lot more opportunities that opened up.
Yeah, that op tempo really probably drove a lot of what was going on at the time that you went through and Patrick went through. I would assume because everyone was doing rotations through that sitcom AOR. But so you ended up spending a total of 15 years on active duty. Is that 14 years or 15 years on active duty?
I don't remember now. About 15, just short of 15 years. So I always say 15 years is kind of how, and not counting 4 years at West Point. But I was medically retired. At 15 years. My last deployment, my last mission was with my team. We were in Mali, Africa, on a JSET, and it was an interesting mission set. And at one point we were. I'm sure you guys have heard all about what's going on in Mali. Al Qaeda and the Lance Maghreb would come. AQIM would come across the Sahara Desert, and they would raid towns and kill people and rape women and so forth. And we were trained as the Echelon Tactique Interarmée, which is sort of their top unit there. And we went out to train them, and we embedded with this local tribe, and it's crazy. And they were like wearing loincloths and had spears, and I mean, it was National Geographic, And we had them set up a perimeter, and we were testing their security. And so all night I was just sort of walking around the perimeter and talking to folks. And they were pretty good, relatively speaking. And they, took our training to heart and everything. And we had a small spot, our ODA, near the center of the perimeter. And we got back, and I mean, I was just toast. I felt so sick. And I told my medic, Tim, I was like, hey man, I'm gonna lay down. He's like, you want some Advil? I'm like, or whatever. And I'm like, yeah, man. So I laid down and I started like just puking my guts out, and I started shaking, and it was weird, right? And Tim was like asking questions, and I was sort of delirious, and we've been briefed that there were all sorts of crazy diseases in Mali, like parasites. A previous ODA that had been there from um, 110, I guess like two guys got spinal meningitis. We heard they had some parasite that gets into your eye and like eats your iris or something, and it's called river blindness. And there's like all this crazy stuff. And so Tim, my medic, he was like, "Hey man, like I'm really concerned." He called back to Fort Carson. They're like, "Get this dude to the embassy." And so they took me to the embassy. They knocked me out. Went to the embassy and ended up, developing this seizure disorder out of the blue, a tonic-clonic seizure disorder, where I would just be normally talking or typing on my computer or walking around, and my brain sort of would shut off, and I'd start shaking. I'd bite my tongue. I'd fall on the ground, and I'd have short-term memory loss. And so that's concerning, obviously. And so my unit, they were like, "Hey man, we don't know what's going on, but you got something. We'll take care of you. We'll try to figure out what's going on." And about 4 years, I went to testing and the top neurologist, and we did all this stuff. And eventually, they couldn't. They had no answer. We have no idea what's happening to you, why this is happening to you, and they said we're just going to medically retire you. And so that's kind of my journey. What happened to me.
Wow. That's very unique, right? I mean, and I assume you were kind of just planning on doing the full 20, like seeing how far.
Yeah, I was going to go 20. I was enjoying myself at times, and I wasn't like dead set. And like I told you guys earlier, I didn't have like a goal, like this is what I'm going to do. But in my mind, because I'd already been there for almost 15 years, I thought I'm just going to go all 20. Why wouldn't I? I'll fight for a command. Worst case scenario, I'll retire as a lieutenant colonel and you know, go do something else with my life.
Mm-hmm.
So it seems like, and we're probably going to dive into this, right? Is like what you did next, right? There's probably some motivation factors in there of maybe not being able to complete that tour.
Yeah, it's a good question. And so it took me, and it's taken me a little while to figure out what I want to do, what excites me, what I'm passionate about, what I'm knowledgeable about. And one of the things I found out about myself is I find great happiness in serving other people, in service,
Mm-hmm.
Serving your country, serving as a leader, serving the guys on your team, being a resource for them, helping them become the best version of themselves. Not just giving people handouts, but giving them a hand up, being there for them, providing them the education that they need so they can do it themselves. I really enjoyed that. And so I started while I was getting my MBA, a company called Mission 60, and it's a leadership development company. And I found great joy, happiness in serving people and helping them become better leaders. Because that's sort of the difference between winning and losing in any organization, whether it's sports or corporate America. It's how strong, how committed, how powerful are your leaders. If you've got powerful leaders, your organization is going to be doing well. If you don't, you're going to fail every time. And so, being young and naive in the business world, in that sense, I knew I needed clients, and what type of clients did I want? I'm a former football player. I always loved football. I love the NFL. I'm going to have NFL clients, and so I started cold calling NFL teams. I Googled a list, and just went down these numbers alphabetically, and every time I made a call, I learned something new, like who I should be talking to, what the director name is, what they're looking for, and dates we should talk, and all these things. And so I finally got all the way down to the letter N, and I got to the New York Jets, and I had a conversation with them, and they gave me an opportunity to go up to Florham Park, New Jersey, to present. They told me that we would not get a contract being our first time, but this would be a learning experience. And after we presented to the New York Jets, the head coach at the time, Rex Ryan, said, "Congratulations, you've just won a contract with us." And so that was our first ever pitch, our first ever client, and from there it opened up the doors to the NFL. And we worked with the Jets and 15 other NFL teams, so half the league, which is pretty cool. Started working with some Major League Baseball teams, and then we realized the money was really in corporate America, and so we started going after corporate clients, and that's fun. We have a great deal of pleasure, like working with these teams, whether it's corporate America or the NFL or professional sports, whatever. I wrote a book called Deliberate Discomfort. It's about getting comfortable, being uncomfortable. It's about my first experience after I earned my Green Beret and walking into my team room, talking to my company commander explaining to me what I need to know to be successful. And these are the people I need to meet. These are the people I need to emulate, learn about them. And so that's what it's all about. I'm writing another book soon. I'm not going to tell you the title yet, but it's sort of book 2 in a trilogy. So Deliberate Discomfort is the first, and then I'll have 2 more books. So the second book is it's on its way right now. It's getting done, so I'm excited about that. And then from the success of Mission 60, I created Warrior Rising, and that's a nonprofit that helps veterans and their immediate family members start or accelerate their own businesses. And that's just been fantastic. It's really taken off. We're going to be in San Antonio on September 10th. I want you guys to be there. We're going to be in Salt Lake City on November 11th on Veterans Day. We're going to help 5,000 veterans this year alone. Hopefully, we'll raise over $3 million this year alone. And we'll have hopefully 60 success stories this year alone. Veterans that we've helped, and they're on their way. They've either earned $1 million or they're on their way to being $1 million companies. And so yeah, we're really excited about that.
I find it interesting when we have conversations with people from the community, and Patrick and I had our own aside about this. You're talking about when you decided to work with the NFL, you just started calling, you just started reaching out, and that seems to be a common thread where no one's afraid to ask. We run into people so many times that are like, "Oh, I can't approach that person because they're too important, or they're a celebrity and they have so many different fans." But I don't see that being an issue. Um, can you talk a little bit about the mindset of just like looking and saying, "Hey, this is the mission that needs to get done. Like nothing's an obstacle to me. I just you see that end goal," because you're going from talking about how, well, if I don't really have a goal, I'm here in the Army, and if I make it to that retirement or whatever, you didn't have a specific path there, but there are goals along the way. Maybe we consider them small victories that we're seeing, but there are goals along the way. Can you talk a little bit about that mindset and everything that goes into not letting the circumstance overwhelm you, but being able to see your way clearly forward?
For sure. In the business world, if you're going to be successful, you got to be a little bit delusional, right? As far as what society defines as a normal mindset. If you're going to join special forces in any capacity, you got to be a little delusional. You know what I mean? The attrition rate is high. You know what I mean? Like, it's incredibly difficult. Like, who in their right mind would try for the special forces, right? Like, who does that, right? If you think about the statistics. And then you think about what they teach you, right? The mission comes first, right? No matter what, we're going to accomplish the mission. If I'm the lone survivor, like in the six stands of the Ranger Creed, the lone survivor, I'm the last dude standing, I'm going to get the mission done. Hell yeah, man. Think about that. And then you think about what I said earlier about show me your friends and I'll show you your future. You know, when you see other guys act that way in the special forces, you tend to be like that person. When you see other people in the business world succeeding and you hear their stories about how they did it, you're like, well, I'm just going to do what they did. I'm just going to be bold. And so, you know, working with the New York Jets was a great example of that. You know, I kicked the door open and I was like, now that I'm in the door, you're not going to let me go. Like, you're going to hire me. And even though you told me you're not going to hire me, I'm going to make it so that you have to hire me. And they did. Now, that's backfired more than a few times. You know, some people really enjoy that bold, you know, take no prisoners. I'm here. I'm not going to accept no for an answer. Some people love that. I do. Sometimes I'll have vets DM me. They'll send me private messages and be like, hey, man, I want in. I want to do this. You know, you're going to do this for me. And I'm like, it kind of resonates with me. I kind of like it. You know, that's what I would do. You're in. You know, but other times I'll give you two examples. Um, there was a professor at the University of Utah, and I went up there and we had this meeting, and everyone told me he's hot shit. He's like the top dog and be super respectful, and I was. And I showed up in a suit and tie and all this stuff, and we talked about what I was looking for and what he could offer, and we sort of agreed to a deal where I'd pay him $200,000, and he would provide his professors and his MBA at the MBA school there for our veterans. I was like, this is amazing. And so I said, all right, well, I'm going to go get the money, and then we'll continue this conversation and we'll make this thing happen. And over the course of a few months, I would send, you know, periodically I'd send an email, and it just was ignored. Like he never responded to me. And I was like, nah, I got a $200,000 check, like right here. Like, what are we going to do? And he just, you know, I talked to his secretary. He's busy. He talked to his stuff. And one day I found myself in the area. And I said, you know what, I'm just going to go up and see this guy. Like, what's going on? Where is he at? And so I walk up the back staircase. That wasn't going to kick his door in or anything like that. I walked up the back staircase and I saw an open conference room, and he was in there with a couple other guys, and they were all just shooting the shit. They were talking. They weren't doing any presentations. They were just talking. You know what I mean? And I was like, okay, well, he's here. You know, and I'm not going to walk in there. I will talk to the secretary. So I talked to the secretary, and you know, I'm like, hello, is this professor in? And she's like, he's not here. And I'm like, oh, he's not here, huh? And she's like, yeah, he's not here. And I'm like, okay. Well, you know what? I just walked past that conference room down the hall and I saw him. So I know he's here. And she kind of stopped what she was doing. I noticed that she was like buying some stuff on Amazon. And so she was bugged that I called her out, you know, and she was like, what do you want me to do? And I'm like, well, if it's not a big deal, could you tell her that Jason Van Camp is here? And if he can meet with me, I'd love to talk to him for a few minutes. So she got up and she went in there, and he came back out, and you know, he approached me, and the first words out of his mouth, "How dare you?" And I said, "Excuse me." He's like, "This relationship is terminated." And I started laughing, and I just turned around and left. And I was like, "Okay." You know, that's an example of how it could go wrong. Like just being bold and aggressive and going in there and saying, "I'm not taking no for an answer." You're going to find people that do not like that. And, you know, I call him the Terminator, you know, every time I refer to this guy. And we've run into each other a few times, you know. But it's no big deal. You know what I mean? Like, you got to take those losses if you're going to have those wins.
Yeah. Yeah. No, it's a great story. I would think, you know, his loss, right? And unfortunately, the loss of, you know, whatever program you guys are going to build together. But, you know, I'm curious, you know, what did you do? Did you find another avenue to put those funds to use?
Yeah, we ran our own program. And so I was the instructor with, there were basically two major instructors, me and one of my founders at Warrior Rising, Joe Hilton. So it worked out pretty well. And we brought in 20 or so veterans to Utah to kind of do this course. And it was sort of the catalyst to create our Warrior Academy. So we started building the curriculum then and there. So it all worked out for us, and I suppose for for the University of Utah guys as well. So really, no hard feelings. It just it was a tough deal. I'm not sure if this guy got accurate information from his secretary or not, but like I said, an example of how it could go poorly, by being aggressive.
Yeah, but I mean, I think we forget that, right? Military, like, I don't know, but in the business world, the sense of failure, it's I mean, it's almost necessary, right? It's necessary for growth to have that sort of. You couldn't maybe what you built wasn't what it is today if that experience went differently, right? You could have been, working for University of Utah rather than running your own business or running your own academy. So we misplace that, right? Is just that sense of appreciating failure when it presents itself.
Growing up playing sports, you know, for whatever reason, like we lost a lot, in sports, and it sucks, and you don't like it, but you learn, what it's all about. Sometimes you win, and sometimes you learn. And losing, there's learning. There's more learning in losing than there is in winning. And one of the things you learn is you shouldn't be afraid necessarily of failure. You should let it build fuel inside of you. You should let it teach you lessons, hard lessons. You should accept that. You should embrace that suck. You know, because you have to choose hard things in life and learn how to choose those hard things in order to become stronger. Because if you don't choose them yourself, somebody else is gonna choose those hard things for you. It's coming either way. Choose hard things, or hard things will choose you. And I think that's the biggest lesson in failure. Is it's gonna either make you stronger, or it's gonna destroy you, and it's your choice.
Yeah, yeah. I'm curious. The If we step back a minute, you were getting medically retired from the military. Like, how did that affect your identity, right? Because we talk to a lot of guys, and whether they retire or they go through medical retirement or they ETS, like they deal with the identity of being a special forces officer in this case, and figuring out what's next. Like, did you struggle in that space?
No, because of what I've seen in life, and what I learned early is being a West Point football player isn't my identity. It's just something I did. Being a Ranger isn't my identity. It's just something I did. Being a Special Forces officer, being a Green Beret isn't my identity. It's just something I did. Who am I really? What am I all about? How do I define myself? And I define myself by my values, like who I am and what I'm all about, because that's what helps me to make my decisions in life. I'm a guy who's determined and resourceful and loyal, right? That's my identity. And so whenever there's a situation where it gets hard, I'm going to be determined to finish it. Whenever there's a situation where people are confused or they're not giving me enough information to complete the task, I'm not going to ask any questions. I'm going to figure it out. I'm going to be resourceful, right? And loyalty is forged in the dark times, man. You know, you can't be loyal when things are easy and good. You got to be loyal when shit's tough and difficult, when there's no reason to be loyal. Like that's who I am. That's what defines me. And I've seen, and growing up in the DC area, generals, and admirals that they retire and they don't have a purpose, and they're like, and they just kill themselves and they commit suicide, and you're like, what the? Like, how can we prevent this? This is crazy. Hey, man, being a general wasn't your identity. It's just something you did with your life. You never really took the time to find out who you were. And as long as we can find a purpose, and I hope that that purpose is service in some way, tied to service, then you're always going to be happy. You're always going to have an identity. You're always going to have something you can fall back on when times are tough.
So I see a lot of this. It's kind of this follow-on mission. You do this one thing and it leads you to the next thing, and you have goals. but you seem comfortable in that space because going back to this identity, it you know what your identity is, so you don't have to have that particular job define you. So you're going from one follow on to the next follow on, but you've been able to develop these programs that help other people, both I guess with Mission 60, and that's pretty cool that the M60. I love what
Yeah.
on the Mission 60. The M60 was Rambo's weapon or whatever.
Green Beret, John Rambo, that was his weapon, you know? The most casualty producing weapon on the battlefield, the pig, the hog. You know, we originally called ourselves Mission Essential. And and it was a terrible name, but it was the one name that nobody absolutely hated. Like, starting a business, one of the hardest things is coming up with a name. He's like, this is the name.
Mm-hmm.
3 people like it, 3 people despise it. And then like you just kind of keep going around and around until you finally settle on a name that nobody truly hates, but they just are like, fine, whatever. And Mission Essential was that name for me, or for our company. And we started the company, and things were going well. So we landed the contract with the Jets under the name Mission Essential. And then Aegis came along. They're a government interpreter sort of translation company, and they saw what I was doing, and they sent me a cease and desist, and they changed their name from Aegis to Mission Essential. They sent me a cease and desist. I looked on their website, and they had stolen my logo. They had stolen like the way that I wrote Mission Essential. They stole everything, and I was like, hell no! Like I was furious. So I hired a lawyer, and then went to battle with these guys for a year. And my lawyer was like, hey man, they're just going to slow play this until you're out of money. You know, you got no choice. You have to change. So we accepted a small settlement from those assholes. And basically, I took the money and turned around and gave it to my lawyer because that's how much it cost, you know, to hire this lawyer for a year. He's like $500 an hour. You know what I mean? Like it's ridiculous. Um, anyway, we had to change the name, and so I was like, well, we'll keep mission because it's continuity and the mission comes first and so forth. Six, we say the commander is the unit designator is the six, and I got your back. You know, I got your six, and then zero meaning we're all equal. We all start at the same level. Nobody's better than anybody else. Mission 60, M60, a lot of symbolism there, and so we went with it.
And so in that after you had developed that's what led you into the Warrior Rising. And are they connected
Yeah.
somehow? Or are they separate? How does that work?
They're two separate companies. Mission 60 is a for-profit company, an entity, and Warrior Rising is a 501c3, a charitable, tax-deductible, organization.
Okay.
And we were training the Oakland Raiders, and we were kind of finishing this big event with them, and it was sort of like a mini Q course kind of thing with the players and the coaches. And it was a lot of fun, and we were celebrating. I brought out a lot of guys, Green Berets and Navy SEALs and wounded veterans, and I was an officer, and so it's sort of been ingrained in me to make sure that everybody's taken care of. And so it's sort of like a knee-jerk reaction. Hey, is everything okay? Can I do anything for you? It's kind of questions that you ask as an officer, if you're a good one, I suppose. And I was talking to my guys, and they're telling me, yeah, we get a large disability check from the government, and we get these charities that take us hunting and fishing, and some of them build homes, and so forth. I'm like, that's great. Thumbs up, everybody's happy. Good to hear it. And I was sort of like just walking away, and I noticed that guys were not happy, and turned around, and we started this conversation. And guys were like, you know what? I like hunting and I like fishing. I go on these trips, and I come home. Nothing has changed for me. Nothing. I had one good day. That's it. As a matter of fact, I'd rather be hunting and fishing because I enjoy that, and I come back home and life is worse, right? Some guys are like, I joined the military for a reason. I want to serve other people. I want to do more with my life. And now everybody just kind of looks at me and some sort of charity case, and they feel sorry for me, and they're trying to. I don't like it. It's uncomfortable. I wanted to be the person serving. I didn't want to be the person being served. One of my buddies, he's a triple IPT Marine. He's like, I just got this home built for me. It's a handicapped accessible home. I think it costs like $600,000. Everybody's calling me a hero in my hometown, man. I'm just a 19-year-old kid that stepped on an IED. I never asked for this home. I never wanted it. I wanted to build a home for myself. I wanted to get a job and earn so I could be proud that I built this home. I earned this home. As a matter of fact, I just sit outside my home that's been built for me, and I don't want to go in. I sit outside and I smoke weed all day because it makes me feel bad. And I said, okay, well, I give my guys tough love. I hear you guys. Well, what are you going to do about it? And they kind of looked at me and they're like, well, it comes down to purpose. I'm like, okay. I said, well, how did you find your purpose, Jay, when you left the military? I talked to him about that identity piece that we just talked about. And I said, I guess starting a business is my purpose. It gives me a chance to give back and to add value to a client and to make money and to bring you guys back out on a team and to have fun and so forth. And guys are like, we feel that same way. We want to start a business too. We want to find our purpose by building something, by creating something, because that's what we did in the military. And I said, well, what ideas you got? And the guys would tell me ideas, and some of the ideas were good, and most of the ideas were just the worst, terrible, the worst ideas you ever heard in your life. And I told them that, like, don't do that. Like, save your money. You're going to spend years of your life pursuing this, and it's not going to work out. And they took my advice to heart. They're like, cool. Like, I won't do it. Thank you for helping me. And the ideas that were good, the guys were like, man, that's great. Move to Tampa Bay with me. You're going to be my COO. Buy-in is $50,000. And it's like, let's pump the brakes, man. Like, I'm not going to do any of that stuff. Well, why not? And I tell them why. And, do you have a business plan? Do you have an operating agreement, a SWOT analysis, a pro forma? And guys are just like, I don't even know what that is. Like, do you have that stuff? I'm like, yeah. Like, well, just give it to me and I'll just copy it. And it's like, well, I know that's kind of how it works in the military, but it doesn't how it work. It's not how it works in business. And they said, well, how do you learn? I said, well, I got an MBA. I said, well, do I have to get an MBA? He's like, no, man, come on, just Google some stuff, figure it out. You're a smart guy. And we ended up the rest of the night partying and celebrating and having a good time. And I went home and started thinking about my guys, started thinking about these conversations, and eventually I said to myself, they were really reaching out for help. They wanted me to help them. They were asking me not just to give them something, to give them money. They were asking me to educate them, to help them do something. And I'm in a position to do something about it, and so I should. And so I started Warrior Rising. And I looked around at the veteran, business, nonprofit sort of world, and I saw, a lot of nonprofits with a lot of hua, but not a lot of dua. You know what I mean? Like they got a lot of good intentions, but they're not really doing it the right way, or they're not doing anything. And so I said, I want to create a one-stop shop for veterans. They can come if they want to start a business. They'll come to Warrior Rising. They'll come to me, and we'll give them everything they possibly need. And that's what I started in 2015. It's considerably different starting a nonprofit than it is starting a for-profit business. I would say it's much harder to start a nonprofit, in my experience. But it's gone well. We've been determined. We've kept grinding, and where we are at today is hopefully we'll be between $3 and $5 million raised this year alone, and we'll help 5,000 veterans this year alone. The goal is to have 60 success stories this year alone, and by 2024 we want to have 100 veteran businesses that are valued at or have raised $1 million. So that's the goal by 2024.
Strong goal.
Wow.
We're getting close. We're getting close.
I'm just encouraged. We had talked to Lauren Manley, and she said that you were one of the people from Special Operations Transition Foundation. She said you're one of the people to talk to. But
she's fantastic. Love Lauren.
And she's so encouraging, especially to the idea that people don't just sit in the realm that they know, because we all know people who have gotten out, that were in the military with us, and they either retired or they got out, and what they're doing right now is the same thing as a contractor, or they've got a GS job where they're working in the same position. So this whole entrepreneurial thing seems to be something that Lauren and the rest of the Special Operations Transition Foundation is really encouraging. And then Matt Lambden and his 18 series bag, he's just, every time I talk to him and he brings up the whole Warrior Rising, he goes on and on about how he's excited and how this is encouraging and how he's looking forward to coming out here to San Antonio and being part of this whole business shower. But the approach that you've provided to everybody is it's helping them to get from point A to point B, rather than just saying, okay, here's money or here's a program, you do it on your own. It's like this process, and it's this network that's coming together. And I definitely see that from that leadership. So besides these 100 businesses it's 100 businesses that are valued at $1 million or more.
That's our goal by 2024. 100 businesses that have gone through the Warrior Rising program. They're making $1 million or more, or they've raised $1 million or more, or tied to that $1 million mark. And we're close. We're pretty close. We had 48 vets go through our program last year alone. Success stories. So they've been to a business shower, and this year we want to have 60. But of those individuals, we can't count on all of them to be $1 million, right? Some of them, like one of them, a guy named Luke Siminer, he's got a company named Inclusive, and he's created an educational platform for blind people and partially blind people. And he started that less than a year ago. I'm sorry, less than a year and a half ago. And he's already valued at $8 million. And he was our champion in Napa, California. He's a rock star. Travis Arnold, he started a shaving company, kind of like a shaving kit in a bag sort of thing. So he has this really cool razor, blades, shaving cream, the brush, the whole thing. It was a side project. I think he was making $4,000 a year on it or something. He was our grand prize champion in Salt Lake City last year. And he just landed I think a $600,000 contract with AFES, last month. So he'll be over $1 million next year, or at least by 2024. So just sometimes there's small companies that make it big. Sometimes they're big companies that might be able to get to 100 million, or some might be just scratching the surface of a million, and some might just be lifestyle businesses. Yeah, I make 300,000 a year. Well, that's great, man. That's plenty of money to live, comfortably in this world. So we just want to help educate, mentor, and provide the resources, including capital, financial assistance, for these veterans to succeed.
Yeah, I mean, it's, when you look at this sort of, Daniel and I talk about this holistic approach, right? And that word gets abused a lot, but the idea of, especially these guys that are coming out of special operations or a lot of combat deployments transitioning, we talk about purpose, and it's really like being an entrepreneur or whatever, starting a nonprofit, starting something where you have to pour everything. You got to bootstrap it, right? You pour yourself into it. I mean, there's a lot of therapy involved in that, right? Like it's a pathway forward than just having to sit there on your porch, and look into the past, right? You actually have something to be hopeful for moving forward and be encouraged by. I think it's awesome.
Yeah.
You got to give vets a purpose. What is your purpose? What are you going to do with your life? If you give somebody a purpose, it's like lighting a fire, man. You know, um, it'll just keep burning and burning and burning, and that's all the fuel that you need to live a happy, productive life, a life serving others, a life well lived.